All right, 3.4. As I stated, all the stuff we talked about yesterday is just a precursor to what we're going to do, in the next few sections. So let's look at some equations with variables on both sides of the equation. Let's look at this one here. Negative 2m is equal to 16m minus 9. Now, the whole idea of solving is to isolate the variable by itself on one side of the equation or the other. Well, this sort of defeats the purpose. We got them on both sides now. So, what we have to do is, step one is to simplify if possible. Okay? Now, understand that simplifying can mean a whole lot of different things now. Okay? Yesterday we talked about using the distributive property, combining like terms, multiplying each side of the equation by the reciprocal. All three of those things are simplifying before we start solving. Okay? So what we're going to do today, with variables being on both sides of the equation, is simplifying before we solve. Yes, Owen? Huh? Well, you hang on a second and we'll figure it out together. Now, so what I have to do here is this. I have to take one of the variables over to the other variable. Now, I can either take this 16m over here, or I can take the negative 2m over here. Okay? Either way, if you mathematically do it properly, it's going to be the same answer. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take this over to the other side. Okay? Now, when you change sides of the equation with a variable, it becomes the opposite. Okay? So when we take the 16m over to the other side, it becomes a negative 16m. Okay? And then you add it. Okay, so we're going to add these two things together. So that gives me negative 18m is equal to negative 9. Now, why is it negative 9? Larry? Yeah, because we had to change up here, we had to change that to plus a negative. Okay, that's why it's negative 9. Now, we solve this by taking and dividing both sides by negative 18. Okay, it cancels over here, leaving me with m is equal to negative 1 over negative 2, which m is equal to 1/2, or 1/2. Okay, now, I want to show you that we would have come up with the same answer if we did it the other way. Okay? Now, in other words, if I would have taken the negative 2 over to this side, here's where people make their mistakes, though. Yes, I can take the negative 2 over to the other side and it becomes a positive 2m. Okay? And that gives me 18m minus 9. Where people make their mistake is they don't put the 0 there. Okay? Or they rewrite the problem, but bottom line is, if I take this over to the other side, there is nothing left on the left side of the equation. How we express nothing in math is 0. Okay? So now I take and add 9 to both sides. That gives me 9 is equal to 18m. Divide by 18. Let me change colors there. Divide by 18. Divide by 18. And you have 1/2. Okay, so either way, you end up with the correct answer. Okay. Now, obviously, unfortunately, that's a very easy example. Okay. Let's look at one that's a little bit harder. Let's see here. Let's go with this one first. 12p minus 7 equals negative 3p plus 8. Okay. Now, I'm going to change that to plus and negative. On these problems, you're probably better off right now changing the subtraction to addition and doing the opposite behind it. Okay? Now, when I'm solving, I like to take the negative over to the other side, because that way it becomes a positive. Okay? And so I take that over here, it becomes a positive 3p. We're combining like terms. This is why if you don't understand combining like terms, you're going to struggle in this lesson. Okay? And if I take these two together, that gives me 15p plus negative 7 equals 8. Okay? Now, the same thing I did with the variable I can do with this. I can take it over to the other side and it just becomes a positive. Okay, that's if I've changed the subtraction. Okay, I'll show you here in a second if you didn't change it how it works. It works the same way. Okay, so that gives me 15p equals what? 15. Which means p is equal to 1. Now, if you didn't change the problem originally, everything is still the same. I take that over, it becomes a positive. That gives me 15p minus 7 equal 8. Okay? Well, you just do this. You add 7, not 8, excuse me. You add 7, cancels, add 7, that's still 15, p equal 15, which is p equal 1. Okay, so on that one, it didn't really affect how you did the problem or the answer. It's just a matter of which is easier for you. Now, let's look at this one. 6 minus negative 5r equals (5r minus 3). Okay, so that is 6 plus 5r equal 5r minus 3. You can, yeah. You can change the plus and negative right there to plus negative 3. Now, I take the 5r over here. It becomes a what? Negative 5r. So what is 5r plus negative 5r? What? 0r. So here's what you have. 6 plus 0r equal negative 3. Well, what is 0 times r? 0. So you have 6 is equal to negative 3. Is that possible? No. So this is no solution. There's not a solution to that equation. And realistically, you should be able to see it right here. No, what you should be able to see is this. Is there any way to take 5 times a number and then add negative 3 to it, and it be equal to 5 times the same number and add 6 to it? Is it? In other words, can I take 5 times 2? What is 5 times 2? 10. 5 times 2 is 10, and then I add negative 3 to 10, and I get 7. And then on the other side of the equation, I say 5 times 2 is 10, and I add 6 to it. You can't do that. In other words, this right here, the 5r, is exactly the same. So I have to do exactly the same thing to it to be equal. That is not the same thing as that. They're not. So they can't be equal. They can't be true, so therefore there's no solution. Brianna. Yep. Yep. Yes, because they're not, for example, then, they wouldn't, like in this one right here, they wouldn't say 12p minus 7 is equal to negative 3x minus 8 or plus 8. They're not going to do that to you yet. Yet. Later in the year they will do it. Okay? When we start talking about the substitution principle and a couple other things, you'll have... No, that's next week. No. Just joking. It's not. All right. Now, let's look at another one. This one here. 24 minus 6r equals 6 times 4 minus r. Okay? Now, this here is the distributive property. So I have to distribute the 6 to each thing in the parentheses. So I have 24 minus 6r is equal to 24 minus 6r. Okay, let's make sure everybody understands when I distribute there, that's 6 times 4 minus 6 times r, which is 24 minus 6r. Now, when the two sides are equal to each other, when they're exactly the same, okay, the answer is because what it says basically is this. I can plug in any number in there and it's going to end up being exactly the same. Okay? Because r has to be the same. In other words, r can't equal 2 on one side of the equation and r equal 4 on the other side of the equation. You can't have that. Okay? So therefore, it's all real numbers. It's not one number. Don't put 1. Don't put 0. Don't put any numbers. It's all real numbers. They're going to be exactly the same. Yes, all real numbers. Just like when you have no solution. No solution is the answer. Not 0, no solution. Owen? Do what? All real numbers are any number that can be expressed as a fraction. Okay? So, yes, it would be decimal numbers. It would be terminating decimals, repeating decimals, fractions, whole numbers. Any of those could be the solution. Now, there are decimals that are not terminating or repeating. That cannot be the answer. Real numbers includes a set of whole numbers, fractions, terminating and repeating decimals, Larry. All right, now, let's look at this one. Ah, yes. 9 times b minus 4 minus 7b equals 5 times 3b minus 2. Okay, so the first things that we have to notice is these two here, which is distributive property. Okay, so I have to distribute the 9 to the b and the 4. I have to distribute the 5 to the 3b and the 2. So here's what we have. I'm going to write it out. 9 times b minus 9 times 4 minus 7b equals 5 times 3b minus 5 times 2. That's the first step. The second step is 9b minus 36 minus 7b equal 15b minus 10. Okay, to make my life easier, plus a negative, plus a negative, plus a negative. Now, I can combine these two terms because they both have a b and they're both raised to the same exponent. 1. Okay? So that means I have 9b plus negative 7b, which is 2b, or not to be. Did you get that, Zach? All right, now, next thing we can do is you can either take the 15b over here, or you can take the 2b over to the other side. Once again, it does not matter which side you take it to, you will end up with the same answer. Okay? Usually what I do is I take the smaller variable to the larger one. The reason I do that is because it helps me not have as many negatives. Okay? I will show you both ways. Okay? So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the 2b to the 15b, which gives me negative 2b okay, gives me negative 2b, which means I have negative 36 on this side, and I have 15 plus negative 2 would be what? 13b plus negative 10. Okay, now, I take the negative 10 over here, it becomes a positive 10, which would be negative 26 equal 13b. Now I take, divide by 13, divide by 13, and I get negative 2. Yeah.
The order you're doing is distributive property, and then you like to, and then you do the switch it over.
Switch the other side.
And then
You use your solving after that. Now, Brianna. Why did I not subtract 15b minus 2b? Yes. Now, okay, let me show you that. I'll be glad to show you that. You have 2b plus negative 36 equals 15b plus negative 10. So, your question is, why didn't I just subtract 2b? Okay, well, bottom line is, that's what I did. Because what is 15b plus negative 2b? That's a positive versus a negative, and so I would have to take, so instead of, you have this, would take the absolute value of the 2 and subtract 15b minus 2b. So it's the same thing. I've just always found it easier when I'm dealing with variables like this just to know that when I move it to the other side, it becomes the opposite, and I add it every time. Well, I follow the rules, just like I did here. I added this. That right there, I added 15 plus negative 2b, which is the same thing as this up here. So it's the same thing. It's just a matter of the way I'm wording it. Now, let's look at the same problem. You don't have to write this down necessarily. Okay, let's look at the same problem if I take the 15b over to the 2b. In other words, I have that choice. Well, that becomes negative 15b, which is negative 13b. Well, I don't know how that got in there. Nick, stop. All right, now, that would give you plus negative 36 equal negative 10. Okay? Well, since I changed everything to plus and negative, then all I got to do is take the 36 over here, and it becomes a negative 36, or excuse me, a positive 36, because it was negative on the left side. So a negative 10 plus a positive 36 is 26. Okay? That gives me negative 13b equal 26. Divide by negative 13, divide by negative 13. And that still gives me b equal negative 2. Okay? Either way, they come up with the same answer. All right? Now, I want to look at one that we didn't really discuss yesterday, but we need to know how to do it. All right. So you have negative sign out in front, 8n minus 2 equal 3 plus 10 times 1 minus 3n. Okay? Now, that right there, okay, that right there says the opposite. Okay? So I'm going to apply that to the parentheses. So the opposite of 8n would be what? Negative 8n. The opposite of subtracting 2 would be adding 2. So I just applied that. The other way that you can look at it is this way. That's negative 1 times 8n minus 2. So that would be the same thing as negative 1 times 8n minus negative 1 times 2. Okay, so that's negative 8n minus negative 2. Well, a minus and a negative equal a addition sign. Okay, so that's how I got that. Okay, now, on the other side, I must distribute the 10 to both things in the parentheses. Okay, so now I've got 3 plus 10 times 1 minus 10 times 3n. So that gives me negative 8n plus 2 equals 3 plus 10 minus 30n. If you were busy paying attention instead of doing your like little Superman act over there where you're ripping off your shirt. Yeah. All right, now I can put those two things together. Okay, so that gives me negative 8n plus 2 equal 13 minus 30n. Now, Brianna, this is where you can do either one. I can take and say 30 plus 30n to both sides, okay? And that gives us 22n plus 2 equal 13. Or I can just do this. Let me rewrite it over here. Negative 8n plus 2. Let me put an or there. Equal 13 minus 30n. I can do this. Just change that to plus a negative. Take it over here. And it becomes a positive 30n. And I just add it. So either way, it's the same thing. Okay? Now, I got to solve it. I got to subtract 2. That becomes 22n equals 11. Divide by 22. Divide by 22. That means n is equal to 1/2. Because 11 over 22 is half. Okay, now, all right, your homework is right there. So, we can do all. If you want to do all, we can do all.
No, just have Larry. Let Larry himself do all that he can do all.
Then all the odd ones would be wrong.
All right, now. All right. 3.4, 18 through 40 even, 45 through 49. Okay? It's due tomorrow. You may go.